Hello everyone, you're listening to For Those We Lost. I'm your host, Jennifer Sullivan. Thank you for being here. If you've lost a loved one to COVID and would like to share your story on the show, please send me an email. My email address is forthosewelostpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can go to the website forthosewelostpodcast.com and click on the contact button and you can reach me that way as well. In this show, people share their stories of losing a loved one to COVID. Every story you hear in this show is full of heartbreak, grief, loss, and frustration, but they are also full of love and hope. We talk about how we are coping, we talk about how to keep the memory of our loved ones alive, and how isolating our grief is as the world wants to move on. You'll hear us talk a little bit about the vaccine and politics, and you may not agree, but I hope you'll keep listening because each person who shares their story on this show has experienced profound grief over the loss of a loved one. And that's something we will all experience. We all love someone, we will all lose someone we love, and we will all grieve. These are the stories of those we lost to COVID. Thanks for being here with me today, everyone. I've got a great show planned for you. Today I'll be talking to Maria in New Jersey. Maria lost her father to COVID in October of 2020, just a few days after he'd retired to Costa Rica. As soon as vaccines were announced and scheduling was opened up in New Jersey, Maria tried to get her mom, her husband, and herself on the list to be vaccinated and had trouble making the appointments. She joined a Facebook group and figured out how to navigate New Jersey's online scheduling system and then made it her mission to help as many seniors as possible get their vaccination appointments. She thought to herself, how could my dad have done this? And so she helped others in her dad's honor. She was featured on Oprah's website and on the Drew Barrymore show. Those links are in the show notes below. But as Maria said to me, she'd give up all that publicity to have her dad back. We recorded this episode on October 5th, 2021. Maria opens up about so much in this show. She talks about how she's coping with her grief, how much different she is now than how she used to be, and how she's healing. We even use the word unprecedented in this show. And with that, I'd like to welcome Maria. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. We connected at the beginning, I think, on Twitter, and then you sent a message to me through the website, which when I started posting social media, I had no idea what to expect, and Twitter was not one of them. So it was really nice to connect with you there and then have you send an email in.
Yes, it was. I'm really glad that I was able to find you on social media. I also heard about your podcast through, I guess, a mutual friend of ours now, Rima Salmon.
Yeah.
As for the COVID-19 memorial, I volunteer with her, and she also mentioned your podcast, and I have been an avid listener since
Oh, good. Thank you.
then. Of course.
Yay. So I know that your father passed away in October, a year ago.
Yes, almost a year ago. 26
Almost a
will
year
be a
ago.
year. Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like to do, and when you live in New Jersey.
I do, yes.
And did he live there initially when COVID, him and and your mom, did they live there when COVID first started in March?
Yes, we, to make a long story short, we are immigrants from Costa Rica. We lived in New Jersey. We arrived to the United States in 1999. We moved to New Jersey in 2000. So we were in New Jersey ever since. So we've been residents of New Jersey for about 20 years.
Okay.
So yes, start of the pandemic, I guess for everybody, practically March marks the beginning of the pandemic. They lived in a small apartment in Trenton, New Jersey.
Okay. And you live nearby?
At that time, we just moved to a new house in Lumberton, which is about 25 minute drive to where
Okay.
they are. So it's not that far. It wasn't that far.
Okay. And how did it affect your family's life at the time? Did you form a pod or I know some people call it a bubble? And what happened with your family and how did it change things for you?
It a lot. My parents were always visiting us at least once a weekend, either Saturday or Sunday, or we will get together. One of our favorite things to do was to go shopping. So I would take the kids with me, and my dad was very big on spoiling literally all of us, including myself. And him and my mom will get into arguments because he was spending too much money on us. And so we would as most Hispanic families are, we're very very close, a close knit family. So when everything started, when it started in March. I made the decision to tell them that we couldn't see each other. My kids were still in school at that time, and I was deadly afraid that they were gonna give us anything or give them something. So I decided to cut physical contact with them. I told them we cannot see each other. Unfortunately, you guys have to stay, but we have to stay put until I guess they tell us what's going on, or how this is going to be managed. And it was like that until about June or July of 2020, until we I saw them again. And what they were doing is that they would go shopping, but they would take advantage of senior hours. So they were up at 7 in the morning to go shopping. My dad was one of those folks that he worked at a school, so he was affected financially as well. They told him that you guys cannot come back in March because schools were going virtual.
Yeah.
So, which in a sense is a blessing in disguise, because then him and my mom were able to spend a lot of time together. They're very hard workers, so they were always working. So that was, I guess, that's one of the blessings, that they were actually together and they did a lot of things together. But most of the time, when they would go shopping, things like that, it would be 7 in the morning, senior hours. And I guess we didn't see them for about 3.5 months to 4 months, until I felt comfortable enough to be able to see them, because we could be outside and the kids were out of school, so there wasn't any threat. We were home now, so it was easier.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
And so your parents decided to retire.
Yes, ever since I was little, and for as long as I can remember, I remember that my parents had a house. They bought a house in this little town, in a beach town in Costa Rica.
Mhm.
And I remember seeing the house. They rented a house for a lot of years. When the pandemic started, and once my dad was laid off pretty much from his job, I guess there was no certainty of who was going back, what was going to happen with schools. He worked at the cafeteria of a school, so there was nobody to cook for, pretty much. They decided that it was time for them to finally retire. My dad was the last one to do so, and they decided that they wanted to go back to Costa Rica and finally lived in that little house that they had bought 30 something years ago.
Wow.
Um, so that was like the first step towards them being free. As unfortunately here in the US, if you are an immigrant and it takes a while for you to get your green card and your citizenship, things like that, your income level doesn't quite accumulate until later on. And my parents came to this country later on in life, so they didn't really have that chance to save much. They saved enough, but not enough to live off retirement. So it was better to live in Costa Rica with that money, and of course travel back and forth because most of us are here in the U.S. So they will go. The plan was for them to move back to Costa Rica, be at the little house, so they knew they didn't have to pay for a mortgage or anything, and then travel back and forth. So spend, like most retirees do when they move to another country, they spend the cold months in a warm place, and then the cold months on the warm place, they come to the United States to spend the summer here. So that was the plan.
Yeah, and what did you think of that? I mean, that had to be hard for you to consider, especially with the pandemic going on, them moving to Costa Rica.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't want that to happen for a lot of reasons. Some of them selfish. I was very close to them. I still am. I was very close to my dad. I am the youngest of four, and pretty much all the children, we were kind of against it. But my parents were also, they really wanted their freedom, and they really wanted to do something for their own, and they really wanted to start living their lives. I'm not going to blame them for that. They worked enough. My dad was 70 when he retired. So they deserved it. And what better place to go live than in Costa Rica, right? I mean, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful place to go. There was hesitance, of course, because there was no vaccine. My dad was older, so was my mom, so we were really nervous that something could happen. It wasn't. I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision for them either. They're very close to my kids, as they're the babies of the house. My brother, he lives in Missouri, so he's far from us, so they don't get to see his baby as much. So mine kids were pretty much, they were very close to them. And then my sister has two kids, but they are older, so life is a little bit different when you have a 19, 20-year old kids at the house. But we were all, my sister, my brothers, myself, and the kids. We were all very close to my parents. We are. So it was a very tough decision. Of course, I was hesitant, but again, they're adults, and they deserve to get to do what they want to do as well.
Yeah. And so tell me what happened, because your dad retired at the end of September, and then they left and went to Costa Rica. So just go into the story of what happened.
Yes. So my dad. Okay, so in March they closed the schools, right? They
Hmm.
decided that kids were going to go virtual, which is perfectly fine. So my dad was unemployed from March into about August. In August, they made an announcement that kids were going to start in person. So my dad went back in September to work, but then again they decided to close the schools. So he then decided that it was time for him to retire. It was a perfect timing, to be honest. My dad was always a very responsible man, and he was always very hardworking. So it was hard for him to say no to work.
Hmm.
But he decided. So his last day of work was September 30th, and the plan was for him and my mom to stay with me and the kids, my husband, in our home for the last 2 weeks, um, of them being in the United States. By then, my sister had helped them get rid of the little apartment that they were renting. They lived with my sister from about April until October. So then those last 2 weeks that were with me, which I'm very thankful that I had the chance to spend some time with them during that time. Then October 15th, it was the day that they left for Costa Rica. I drove them to the airport, holding back tears. I was swallowing really hard the
Hmm.
whole way there with a knot in my throat and my chest because I was really nervous. I told my mom this and I said, Mom, if something happens when you guys are down there, we're not going to be able to go. We won't be able to go see you. We won't be able to go be with you. So this is the decision that you guys are made, and we have to be okay with it. But just be mindful that we might not be able to go down to see you if something happens. They arrived on October 15th. They were staying with my cousin, who was with them for their quarantine. He had an extra bedroom, a nice apartment. So they had all the half space, and my parents were always very careful. They flew with KN95 masks and even a face shield and the whole nine. They did everything right. We still don't know what happened and how they caught it, but they arrived on a Thursday. And on Tuesday, I get a phone call from my mom that my dad's not feeling well and that he has slight fever. And but it was just that, just a slight fever and a little bit of a runny nose. And we thought, he just got the flu shot. My dad used to always get very sick after the flu shot.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
it might not be scientifically proven, but he did get sick after the flu shot. So we um, kind of try to brush it off, right? Because you don't want to believe that something might be up. Um, by Wednesday, he started feeling a little bit worse, but he was responding to medication. So if they would give him Advil or any type of medicine for fever, like his fever will go down. It wasn't high either. It was a low fever, maybe like 99, maybe 101. It wasn't super high. But then on Thursday, he was sleeping a lot. Um, and I called him, and he answered the phone but gave it to my mom directly.
Mm-mm.
I knew something was wrong because my parents were always calling me. They call me a lot. And between Tuesday and Thursday, I gotten like one phone call. So I knew something was up.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we do. I do that too. I guess it's a family thing. If something's up, I try not to call people because I don't want to worry anybody.
Right.
So if my boys are sick, I tend to not call my mom until I've talked to the doctor, just to, not to worry anybody. So I think that's what's happening with them. My dad answered the phone. He was in bed. He gave it to my mom. My mom was laying next to him, and she said, he's sleeping. He's not feeling too good. Mind you, that my timeline, it's a little bit distorted just because everything happened. It was so traumatic that I'm pretty sure this is the right timeline. My cousin might disagree with a day or two, but um, then I think actually by Thursday afternoon, they took him to the clinic, a private clinic in Costa Rica, because he wasn't doing well. They took his oxygen levels. So my parents travel with a thermometer and an oximeter. So they were prepared. They went out prepared. We took this pandemic seriously, all of us. We were very careful with everything. And my dad's oxygen level was about, like, I think it was like 89, 87, 89. So they decided to take him to the clinic. They got to the clinic, and they told him that he needed to go to the hospital right away.
Oh, wow.
My mom wasn't there because, again, with COVID protocols and things like that, it's only one person, and my cousin was the one that drove, so it was just easier for my cousin to take my dad than for my mom to tag along and everything, just in case. And then they took him to the hospital in ambulance. Um, Based on what we were told, They don't understand how my dad made it to the hospital alive, because his oxygen level was really low by the time. I'm not gonna mention. I'm not gonna say a number because I don't. I again, my brain has kind of shut down a lot of the stuff that happened because again, this is a lot of trauma with this, but it was low. So he got to the hospital on Friday. By Friday morning, we were getting phone calls. We were in communication with his doctors, and I can say that then that Thursday when he answered the phone, that was the last time I sort of talked to him.
Hmm.
When he went to the hospital, they he didn't even have a phone or anything. You know what I mean? Because he just like left and just took him. We were in constant communication. They did a COVID test. Then they took him as positive test, and they started giving him oxygen. He was good though. He was talking. He was in good spirits. All you can hear for what I heard from my cousin and my mom is that you can hear sort of a mumbled voice because of the oxygen mask and the oxygen tubes that they put on your nose. So he kind of sounded a little bit, kind of muted, like muffled because of the oxygen. By Saturday, they saw that he was responding to treatment, so they started to give him plasma, the plasma treatments. But his oxygen level was still low. Like that was like his fever was going down. He didn't have a cough, but his oxygen level was still pretty low. Um, then on Sunday, he called at night, that night, and he talked to my cousin for a moment. He talked to my mom, and then he said to my mom, "Oh, I gotta go because they're bringing out coffee." My dad loved coffee, and
Oh.
he got to talk to my brother. My brother called him, my older brother who lives in Costa Rica. He got to talk to him, and then they try to for what I understand, they try to disconnect him um, from his oxygen to see how he was doing that Sunday night. So he got up to try to go to the bathroom, and his oxygen level was dangerously low after they try to take the oxygen off of him. It was so low that they put him back on in a higher level. There is a specific machine that they gave him. And again, a lot of the stuff that he was given, for what we understand, he was given to folks that are responding well to treatment, that the
Yeah.
doctors believe that are going to make it regardless of their oxygen levels. So we were very, very happy with the way he was responding to things. In between Sunday night and Monday morning, though, his oxygen level got so low that they told him that he needed to go on a ventilator by Monday morning. They called my cousin around, it was like 6 a.m. their time. It was 8 a.m. my time here in New Jersey. And my cousin called me and he said, "Hey, your dad's not doing well. They're going to have to put him on a ventilator." But he said no. I was half asleep, right? So in my head, it's like, okay, I'm okay. So they said, so they're going to keep him comfortable and they're going to keep him on the oxygen he has. As we're talking on the phone, he gets another phone call. So he says, "I'll call you right back." And within 5 minutes, he got the call that my dad passed away. So technically speaking, it's about 4.5 days from positive diagnosis to death. Um, it was quick. It was very quick. Um, I'm I'm thankful in a way because I'm not very good at dealing with things I can't control. So I don't, and this sounds selfish, but I don't know what I would have done if he would have been intubated for months or weeks. And I'm thankful that at least also that, and my mom says the same thing, that he went the way that he decided to go, um,
Yeah.
if that was the case.
Yeah. He had the choice to go on a ventilator and he said no
Yeah,
because it was a decision he made for himself.
yeah.
Yeah. When we spoke on the phone, you said you had a video that he sent you where he said he was going to be fine. And when did he send that to you?
That was my cousin sent that to us on Wednesday. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
Wednesday. So we were calling, of course, like all of us were calling, like,
Yeah.
how's he doing? Is he fine? What's going on? Why does he have a fever? Blah, 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 right? Because, you're worried. And again, you're not there. You're not
Yeah.
there. You're at the mercy of whoever wants to answer the phone, which I think my brothers and my sister and will be forever thankful to my cousin for the care. And he sent a video where my dad is sitting up on the table and sitting with food in front of him as always. And he said, I'm fine. Hey guys, I feel good. I'm getting better. So don't worry. It was like a 10-second video. I kid you not.
Yeah. Yeah. How precious is that video to you?
It's hard to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched it probably in almost a year, but it's I'm glad that he was feeling that way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that he was feeling confident. um, it's a blessing and it's a curse, right? Because you see the video and then you say to yourself, well, he was feeling good, but then you also think, but then he wasn't ready to go. So it's a tough video, but it's of course it's a gift. I mean, and I know one day when I'm ready, I'll look at it again and with his with the shirt that he used to wear this like sports shirts, and he had one of those on, and he was sitting with his gray pants and dark gray, that charcoal gray pants that he used to wear. My dad was a very elegant man, and so he was always dressed up, even if he wasn't doing anything. It's like the golf shirts that he used to wear, the shiny kind of golf shirts that he liked.
Wow.
Um, so he had that on. I also did want to say that one of the good things about the Costa Rican health system is that seniors take a lot of priority there. They're called gold members.
Oh, wow.
Um, no affiliation with that Austin Powers movie, um, but they're in Spanish it's ciudadano de oro, which means it's like a gold citizen. So their care is a very good care. It's primary care. They first in line for things, and also in Costa Rica, everything is a phone call away. So my brother had a friend who worked at a hospital. Not where my dad was, somewhere else. My sister has a friend who's a doctor at another hospital, and then my mom had another friend who was also a doctor. So between the three of them, would check my dad's file and then give us updates. So we weren't hearing things directly from his doctor sometimes, the one that was taking care of him, but at least we had that opportunity to hear it from other specialists, and they will read the notes and let us know how things were going on. Um, so I'm also very thankful for that, because you do have like a network of carers and people that knew my dad, and they wanted my dad to succeed. I recall, especially my sister's friend. On Sunday night, she told my sister, "Your dad's doing great. He looks like he's doing really good." And then the next day, when she found out my dad passed away, she told us she was in absolute shock. Like she could not believe it, because nothing in nothing in the charts showed that my dad was gonna pass.
Yeah.
Um, so that was the shocking part. Yeah.
Yeah. And your mom, did she also get COVID?
Yes, so my mom ended up she was COVID positive, of course. In Costa Rica, once you are positive in a household, then everybody else is considered positive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you kind of have to stay put where you are. Regardless of that, they did do testing and they came out positive. My mom lost her sense of smell and she had a slight cough. That's all she had.
Wow.
My cousin lost his sense of smell and taste, and my cousin's wife did get a little sicker than the two of them. So then that was another hurdle for all of us, right?
Yeah.
When my cousin called me, I had to call my sister and my brothers because my cousin called me and all I could hear is my mom's screams
Oh,
in the background. So I said to him, I'll take care of it. Just take care of mom.
yeah.
He's like, are you sure? I'll take care of it. I'll tell them. Because all I could hear was her.
Yeah.
And the worst part is that, I know she wasn't alone because my cousin is like a son to her. But then my aunt's telling me, they can't even go in the house because they have COVID, right? So they're in the front porch listening to my mom scream and nobody can hug her, right? So that part was rough. I had to then call my sister and my brothers. 0 out of 10. I would not recommend doing that. I don't recommend it. But I guess somebody had to do it.
Yeah.
Um, so she, so we got that going, right? And then you go through the initial shock of your beloved dad dying, and then you go straight to now, mom.
Mm-hmm.
What's gonna happen with my mom? Not only did she get the shock of her life by losing the man she has loved for 47 plus years, but now she's also sick. So, needless to say, for the 2 weeks after my dad passed away, it was a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of worrisome that I was gonna get a phone call saying that she got worse,
Mm-hmm.
or that she has to go to the hospital, or that her oxygen levels are low. So bless my cousin's heart, because my mom, of course, she didn't want to eat. She didn't want to get up. Who wants to, right? Who?
Right.
I don't blame her. I wouldn't want to either. I didn't, and I was
Yeah.
here. So he took care of her. He gave her vitamins. He gave her soup. He fed her. He got her up. He told her to go ahead and get up, take showers, drink some tea. He really he had a really really tough job ahead of him to help my mom out. And then he was getting phone calls from us every day, or he would send us a message like, okay, her temperature is 98, her oxygen is 97, she's fine today. And that will be our our everyday for 2 weeks. We
Yeah.
couldn't. It was really we had a Zoom memorial for my dad the Wednesday after he passed away. In Costa Rica, it's very quick how you bury people. So pre-COVID, let's say my dad passed away on Monday. Let's say he passed away Monday morning. The viewing would have been Monday afternoon, and he would have been buried on Tuesday morning.
Wow.
It's quick, very very
Yeah.
quick. So for us, what we did was we had a Zoom memorial for him that Wednesday with close friends and family. All I remember is my mom just saying how thankful she was that my dad died in his own terms.
Mm-hmm.
Because him and my mom had made an agreement. If something like that happens, they didn't want to be connected to machines. They didn't want to be in a vegetative state, or they didn't want to be, in a coma. They kind of just wanted to go as naturally as possible.
Yeah.
So she was, of course, she wasn't happy, but at least it gave her comfort knowing that my dad passed away that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you have any thoughts on why it took him so quickly? Why COVID took him so quickly? What I guess he had a fever and he wasn't feeling well, but do you have any theories on why it took him so quickly? Because it sounds to me like he worked and he was a relatively active person with not a lot else going on medically.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm very hesitant to say this. I am gonna say it though,
Okay.
but I'm very hesitant to say this, and I'm hopefully we'll get into this later. But I hate when people say, "And did he have something else
Mm-hmm.
going on? Did he have any pre-existing conditions?" Because it doesn't excuse what this virus does to people,
Yes.
right? So I thought about this a lot before we got on this podcast, because I'm gonna say it because I'm sure it's a factor. But my dad smoked for years, for years. However, my dad stopped smoking when I got pregnant with my first child. He's going to be 13 on
Yeah.
Sunday. So that's 13 years of smoking. And even before that, I think he was already winding down. Do I want to say that was a factor? It could be 100%, right? I mean, smoking does a lot of bad things to your body.
Yeah.
But I do want to say my dad was very active. My
Mhm.
dad would go for 1 or 2 hour walks almost every day. He would love to do that with my mom. My mom was also very active. They were very adventurous. He would, like I said, he loved walking. He loved going to parks. They loved going to Atlantic City together. So I honestly don't consider that a factor in all of this.
Mhm.
But I'm not gonna say that his lungs weren't weak,
Yeah.
because with a lot of smoking, of course, your lungs get weak even with one cigarette, right? It's sometimes that's all it takes. But again, I'm hesitant to be like, well, he was a smoker, so that's it, because it's not. You see it all the time. People have no underlying conditions,
Mhm.
and they get really sick and they pass away.
Yeah.
So that's not a. I know it could have been a factor, but I'm not gonna say that was 100% one of the reasons why it hit him so hard and so quick. I think, honestly, it could have been just age, or he was just, you know, unlucky. I have no real explanation of why he would have gone so quick when he
Yeah.
was responding so well um, to all the treatments. I do want to say though, when he passed away, it's easy to start pointing fingers, and it's easy to like yell at people, and it's easy to yell at the world and say if they would have stayed, or if they would have gone to a hotel, or if they would, like, whatever. I do believe though that we all have our lifetimes kind of written down. So regardless of whether it was COVID or anything else, I do feel that my dad was supposed to pass that day. And I feel that sort of brings me comfort. Um, I try not to focus on the what ifs, because all that does is fill you with resentment and fill you with regret. And I know that my dad, the last thing he would want me to do is to be angry, or to be sad for that reason. So, as much as I would like to find sense into it, I just decided not to question it. Might be wrong, this approach. It might be a denial approach. I don't know. But I just decided not to question it, because you can't change the outcome anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and with grief, we all get through it in our own way, and this is your way of getting through it. With my mom, afterwards, I thought, well, she had Alzheimer's, and
Hmm.
I also don't like the pre-existing conditions question, or the comorbidities. My mom had Alzheimer's, but before she had Alzheimer's, she was a very active lady,
Hmm.
running around in the community doing her thing. She was a crossing guard at her grandson's school, and
Hmm.
she was active and healthy. And with the Alzheimer's, she got aggressive, and they put her on this medicine for like an antipsychotic, and it made her gain a lot of water weight. And for a
Hmm.
long time, I thought, oh, well, it just put so much pressure on her lungs and her heart. That's why COVID took her so quickly.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. I quit smoking 11 years ago, and I read all these things before I quit. I had to quit cuz I kept getting bronchitis, and
Hmm.
then I got pneumonia. And then I this is a total aside, but I had a chest x-ray, and I had a spot in my lung, and I thought if I had to call my family and tell them that I had lung cancer, I would feel so stupid for having smoked.
Yeah,
So I
of
quit
course.
smoking. And they say that after 10 years, it's like your lungs are completely renewed, like you didn't smoke. And I felt that it was so comforting to me to know that now my lungs are as healthy as they were before.
Hmm. Hmm. Especially if you try to maintain a
Hmm.
somehow active lifestyle. You don't have to go run marathons, but if
Right.
you walk once a day, right? Or if you,
Yep.
when your Apple, when your watch tells you to get up, stand for 5 minutes, then you stand for 5 minutes. I mean, I think
Yeah.
everything counts.
Yeah, I do too. I think a lot of it is that wake up call that we get to, oh, I'm doing something really dumb and it could kill me, so I need to stop doing it.
Yeah.
And then it's, afterwards, it sounds to me like your mom and your dad had a very active life. So I understand your hesitancy in talking about it. I appreciate that you trusted me with bringing that up, and how you're coping with all of it, just thinking that that was his time. It was his time, and he went on his terms.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, I just don't want that to be used against his legacy, right? Because it's not fair. I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, he smoked for a long time, but he stopped, and he stopped again, good 13, 14 years ago. So I'm not gonna say, oh yeah, he was like lighting up 3 packs a week or whatever, because that's not true. And then with the coping, I have to be honest. There has been. I used to brag. Let's put it this way. I used to brag all the time. Nobody dies in my family, I used to say, and that's because all my uncles were alive. All my aunts were alive.
Mhm.
I had no experience with death, on at least on my mom's side. There was no deaths. Then as you get older, you eat your words, right? But
Mhm.
then in 2017, I want to say I'm very thankful for my in-laws. They were like my second parents. I have to say, my mother-in-law used to call me her daughter. Um, and then in 2017, my father-in-law died after a brief hospitalization. Again, they weren't thinking that he was going to pass, and then he ended up passing. Then, about a year and a couple months later, my mother-in-law died in 2018. And then my grandmother, who raised the four of us while my parents worked, died in 2019. And now my dad in 2020.
Wow. That's a
Um,
lot of loss.
it's a lot of loss. And I saw what grief can do to you. And I saw it with my husband. I couldn't imagine what as much as I love my father and mother in law, I could not imagine what it was to lose your parents within a year and a half. I cannot even imagine what it is to losing your parents back to back from COVID, when you cannot see them, when you cannot talk to them, right? Um, but what I learned from these losses before my dad is that, again, you cannot change the outcome of the situation. And whoever's listening, whoever listens to this, I guess the takeaway that I want people to understand is not, I'm not trying to suppress any feelings of grief or anger, because I am angry, I'm pissed. I'm still am. But I do want people to understand that you can, and it's okay to cope this way. You try to find answers, but it's not going to change the outcome. So to be resentful or to hate the world, it's not going to bring anybody back. So the way that I cope is by just not justifying, but just saying it is written. And I'm not much of a religious person. I'm really not. Um, but I do believe that your destiny is sort of written down already. So when it's your time, it's your time. And it was his time. As much as I don't believe it, it was
Yeah.
his time.
Yeah.
Um,
And you coped in a really wonderful way a few months later when vaccines came out in New Jersey. You helped people, seniors. You focused specifically on seniors and helping them get their vaccine appointments. Can you talk about that and some of the work you did there?
yes. So we didn't, after my dad passed away, he passed away on October 26th. And I say 10 days after he retired because, technically speaking, his first day of retirement was October 15th when he left for Costa Rica. That was like his first day of freedom, right?
Yeah.
After my dad passed away, my mom was pretty much first stuck with COVID, so she had to wait a couple weeks for the COVID to clear out, for the positive test to come back negative. And that can take a couple weeks. That can take up to 3 weeks, depending on your body, right? And
Hmm.
then she had to go through embassies and all kinds of paperwork to make sure that my dad's ashes can come back, because she was very worried about that they were going to retain his ashes at the airport. I cannot explain to you how difficult it was to give my dad a hug at the airport. It was interesting. I gave him a hug and I waited until they kind of were out of my eyesight, when they went through customs.
Hmm.
I waited because I was so sad that they were leaving me. I was so selfish for saying that they were leaving me. And then to come pick up my mom, and my dad's in a box.
Yeah.
And not even a cat, in a little box that fits on a carry-on.
Yeah.
It's surreal.
Hmm.
It's absolutely surreal. So my mom came back in December after jumping through a lot of hoops to get my dad back. And I think it was in sometime after the election, so maybe November 10 or 12, that they announced that the vaccines were available, approved for emergency use. And of course, it was bittersweet. I cried a lot that day, mostly anger tears. at that point.
Yeah.
Um, then New Jersey opened their COVID vaccination site, and then my husband is it's disabled, so he's home, and he takes a lot of medication, so it makes him immunocompromised. And then my mom she was 67 at the time. So I went into the website, I signed them up. I'm asthmatic, so I signed myself up as well, just to get on the wait list, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then once you sign up, they send you an email saying, "Okay, thank you so much for signing up. We'll get back to you. We'll send you a link when it's time for you to schedule your appointment." However, if you would like to look for an appointment yourself, here is a list of all the places where you can make the appointment, right? Excuse me. So you will click on, let's say, CVS Pharmacy. You click on it, and it'll send you to a web page where you can try to get appointments, but everything was booked. It took me about a month. So this was like January, February. I was still looking for appointments for them. I was not getting anything. And then somebody mentioned that there was a group on Facebook for vaccines. Um, Two girls from New York actually created the group, and I became a member. And within a day, I was able to book appointments for my husband and my mom.
Wow.
Yeah, within a day. These people were able, and this was a volunteer, of course, as anybody on Facebook pretty much was saying how to get vaccinated. So some people, they will learn the patterns on this website. So they will say, okay, CVS releases appointments every day at midnight, or Rite Aid, or this other pharmacy, it shows appointments at 5 a.m. So one day I decided to get up at 4:30 in the morning, get on a queue for one of the pharmacies, and I was able to book both appointments.
Hmm.
So I said, wow, if my dad was alive, how in the world would he be able to do this if he didn't have me? How do you do this? This is impossible. It's impossible for a very tech savvy 36-year-old. How is somebody like my dad going to do this? So that day I posted a picture of my dad on the group, and I said, I want to help seniors get vaccinated on in memory of my dad who died a couple months ago. Um, and then I said, I understand everybody's concerns, and if you're a child like myself that is in desperate need to get your parents protected, send me a message. And that's all it took.
Wow.
By the end of the day, the post had like almost 2,500 likes. It had hundreds of comments, and my inbox was insane.
I
uh,
bet.
yeah, and then little by little, I just started taking people's information and asking for certain information, date of birth, which is another thing. This is how desperate people are, that they were giving their information to a complete stranger on the internet to get a
Mhm.
vaccine.
Wow.
That's mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
People would take pictures of their insurance cards and send them to me. People
Wow.
would give me their social security numbers, even though like you wouldn't ask for it, like you would just show them what is asked, and they will send them to you. If I was someone else, if I was somebody that was not a honest person, this would have gone really bad. And I was able to book a couple hundred appointments.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite. I didn't sleep much for a couple of weeks because I was up at like 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning, booking appointments. In a good day, I would book about 10 or 15. Would constantly checking and checking and checking and checking on my phone because I was working, of course, so I would check on my phone. So it was a lot of sleepless nights, but it gave me a purpose. It gave me it gave me a reason to get up in the morning. I said this to you before. as parents, we have a reason to get up in the morning. We have children. We have responsibilities. But even as an adult, there are days that, especially with a death like this and so traumatic, where you couldn't see any the person. My dad didn't deserve to die alone.
Mm-hmm.
Your mom didn't deserve to die without you next to her, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it was hard. It still is, but
Mm-hmm.
back then it was hard to get up in the morning. So this gave me a reason to do it besides my children. I needed something for myself, and this did it. So I'm forever thankful that I was able to help out in this way. I was looking for a reason to get up because I couldn't.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so, for about how long did you do this for people?
Oh, about a couple months.
Wow.
I can't. I was so sleep deprived that I cannot tell you dates. But it was about a month and a half, 2 months.
Wow.
Um,
That's
uh,
amazing.
yeah, a couple months. Yeah, I stopped around April, I think. It was probably like 2.5 months, to be honest, of doing it because it was the demand was just so high.
Yeah.
Uh, but once the majority of folks started to get vaccinated, then it was easier to get appointments, and now you're walking to buy ham at the store, and somebody's stopping you asking if you want to get a vaccine.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different now, but back then it was a lot. It was
Yeah.
a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah. So, one thing I want to ask you is you're coming up on a year since your dad passed away, and I was thinking about it this morning. You are right in the middle of those days that you think about, like he retired on this day, he flew out on this day, he was living with you this time last year. How are you coping with that?
Um, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. Um, I have to be honest with you. I still don't believe it.
I can relate.
I don't want to sound contradictory because I don't. I believe that he's, again, that your time is when your time is, and that's it, right? Like when the alarm sounds, that's your time. But
Hmm.
I don't believe it. I don't understand it,
Yeah.
and I can talk to you about it. I can talk to. I've talked to other people about it. Interviews I've done. I cannot talk to my mom about it. I
Yeah.
cannot talk to my sister about it. It's hard for me to talk to my brothers about it.
Yeah. You're all grieving very differently.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, I just don't understand.
Do you think it's because you weren't physically right there with him? I feel the same way. I struggle with it every day. It just feels like my mom isn't really gone because I did not see her end. Do you think that that's part of what's going on with you?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes I think that. I just, it's just hard for me to understand.
Hmm.
And I'm biased when I say this, but my dad was a really wonderful person. My dad always had a smile on his face. This affected not only my family, but my cousins and my aunts and my uncles, and tremendously
Yeah.
because he was so loved. My dad was so loved. So, in a way, do I wish I would have seen him even after? Yes, I do, of course, because it brings closure. I think some
Hmm.
of us are visual, and I understand exactly what you're saying because I'm a visual person. It brings closure to people sometimes when you see your loved one actually passed.
Yeah.
That could be a reason. that could also be a reason why my children have coped so well with the loss, because they really didn't get a funeral, right? We didn't
Mhm.
get a funeral. We didn't really see him. Like I said, he came back in a box.
Yeah.
Um, but I just think it's also, I think mentally it's a struggle for me. I've always been known, maybe it's just myself, maybe it's me that I know myself that way, but I always have to get it. Oh, my life has to be together. I always have to be put together. Not for appearances. It's just mentally. I just think that if I crumble, then everybody else does. A lot of like what I feel is that I can't really crumble. I can't really let my guard down. I can't really grieve, because then if I grieve, then it makes it real to everybody else,
Yeah.
and I don't want everybody else to get upset either.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure why I think this way, because but I do. I think it's a. Um, I think that's the reason why I took it upon myself to call my brothers and sisters, because I didn't want that to be on them. I didn't
Yeah.
want that job to be on them. I didn't want them to carry that, which is interesting because I'm the youngest of all of them.
Mhm. I was
Uh,
just thinking that. Yeah.
but I just didn't want them to carry that. On that same token, I also want my kids to see that you can cope with losses differently. And again, I don't think it's an appearance, because they have seen me cry. My little one is really funny. My little one is 6, and he sees me crying, and he says, "Are you crying?
Mhm.
Are you crying again?" And I said, "Yes, I am, because of your dad, because of abuelo." He calls him abuelo.
Mhm.
And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Why? Don't you know that he's coming back as a bird?"
Oh.
How do you know, how do you not keep it together when you have a baby that it's coping in a he's coming back as a bird?
Yeah.
And that's his reasoning for not seeing his abuelo. He sees him in the birds.
Yeah.
um, and I want my boys to say, you have to acknowledge your feelings. I don't want to sound preachy. I swear I'm not. I'm the least preachy person you've ever met. But you have to acknowledge your feelings, and you have to acknowledge your anger. It's okay to be angry. I'm pissed off. Sure, a lot of people are, especially when you see this is a hoax, or only weak people pass, only weak people die, or what pre-existing condition did he have, or masks don't work, things like that, right?
Yeah.
It's okay for you to be angry, and you should be, because your loved one's death matters.
Yeah.
It matters. Maybe not to some stranger on the internet, but it matters to you, and it matters to your family.
Mhm.
And they are victims of this virus. So it's okay to be angry. But you have to, I want them to see that you can use your anger for something powerful, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So whether it's art, or music, or writing, or helping seniors get vaccine appointments,
Yeah.
whatever it is, I want them when they get older to Google their mom and see she lost one of the pretty much one of the loves of her life, and she got up and she twisted it around to do something positive because she's hurting and she doesn't want other people to hurt.
Yeah.
And I want them to see that because it's not easy, but it's doable. So that was also one of the reasons why I started volunteering because I wanted to show them that is an example.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're continuing to volunteer with the COVID memorial in New Jersey.
Yeah.
At Yeah, and you're continuing to do things like that, which is meaningful. I mean, it's helping you and it's helping others.
Yeah, I think that the memorials are very important.
I do too.
I was telling Rima a couple of days ago. I said, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of your of your idea. And I said, I don't mean it in a bad way. I just think it's fantastic. A lot of us a lot of us don't have a place to go talk to our loved ones. We don't have graves. We don't have memorials until now. So they're important.
Yeah.
It helps you heal. It helps you be in a quiet space for a little bit of time, just talking to the sky or the trees or them, whatever it is that you believe in. Um, and I'm really, really thankful that I have been given the opportunity to continue volunteering in whatever way possible. And when the boosters start, if seniors need help with boosters, I'll be there
Yeah.
because my dad can't.
Yeah.
And I want people to, as immigrants, I'm always jealous of folks that have been in the United States for generations after generations because they can go on like 23andMe and stuff and find like, my great 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 grandfather was a miner, coal miner, and I don't have that. I'm a first
Yeah.
generation immigrant. So I have taken it upon myself to extend my dad's legacy as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, you're definitely doing that.
So that when my great 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 grandchild searches for me, they'll find him too.
Yeah.
That's what you
Wow,
do.
that's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, wow. That is just beautiful. Did you send your dad's name into the flags that were at the Washington Memorial
I
in
did.
Washington? Yeah, I did that too.
I
I
did.
did that too. I saw when they sent me the photo, like they sent me the email and I looked her up. It was so much more emotional than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. People might listen to this or they might read the story and say, "Well, he didn't die in the United States." Okay, understandable. But he was a citizen of the United States.
Hmm.
That he wasn't even out of quarantine when my dad passed away. He was 10 days into his retirement when he passed away. He didn't even leave the house. The first time he left the house was to go to the doctor. So I count him as one of the seven, now 700,000 folks. And his flag said, Dad, I am going to do everything in my power to continue your legacy in this country.
Oh, yeah. And you're doing that.
I hope so.
You are.
It's emotional for sure.
Hmm.
For us,
Yeah.
it's just, you and I are not the first people that have lost a parent.
Hmm.
We're not. We're not in that way. I don't mean to sound harsh, but we're not special, right? Because
Right.
um,
Y- Yeah, I understand. I understand that part. I'm part of a grief group where everybody in the group has lost a parent. And I feel like some of them are moving on and I'm still stuck because even though it's been 14 months, there's something about COVID grief. And I think that isolation, and then also the fact that you don't get together and do the traditional funeral, wake, hugging, kissing, talking to family members, having food and
Mm-hmm.
telling stories and
Mm-hmm.
laughing, and those things that are so important to grief.
Yeah. And also that it's a preventable disease now.
It is. Yeah.
It's preventable. So you don't, not only you know don't get the whole saying goodbye to your loved one with the whether it's cremated or with the viewing, and like you said, and then the food and the hugs and the crying,
Mhm.
you're doing all alone. Like I remember the day my dad passed away. My sister is an essential worker, and so is my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law, they work for the township, and my sister that morning was going to go get a COVID test because she was having some type of sinus issues. I couldn't go see her.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to see her until 3.5 days later when she got her negative results. So my sister, who lives 15 minutes from me, we couldn't grieve together. We couldn't even hug each other. And I think that's the traumatic part, like you said, for a lot of us. We're not special, I get that. But there's something, like you said, there's something about this particular way that folks are dying that is just so traumatic for the families to stay behind.
Yeah.
And if there is anybody out there that is going to listen to this podcast and maybe change their mind on anything, I wish folks had more consideration for that part, for the survivors. I don't know about you, but for me, if I go on Twitter or if I go on Facebook, or you hear folks saying, or you read people saying, my masks don't work, this is not real, I don't need the vaccine, whatever it is that they're saying, right?
Mhm.
Fake news, whatever. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like my dad dies over and over
Mhm.
and over and over again.
Yeah. It's triggering. For me, I go on, I can look at a few things and then I have to close it down. It's triggering for
Yeah.
me. Mhm.
Yeah. It's very hard to not feel like not to take it personal.
Mhm.
Like it's very hard not to take it personal, and it's very hard not to feel like there is something, like you want to respond and you want to get into it with people, but it's sometimes I have, don't get me wrong, if you Google me, I'm sure there's some comments there and there that, but I try not to, because it's like I'm the one of the last posts I made on Twitter and Facebook, I just said, I'm not going to change your mind, but my dad's death mattered. Might not have been your dad, it might not have been your uncle or your son or your brother, but it was my dad, and his death matters to me.
Mhm.
So when you say this doesn't work, when you say vaccines don't work, when you say this is herd immunity and all this other stuff that people are saying nowadays, just think about people like me, like you,
Yeah.
that are have to relive this death over and over. It's like a slap in the face
Mhm.
for those of us that survived this. It's that lack of compassion.
Mhm.
I also have to say I'm very thankful for my husband, because he really just let me be. Like the day after the my dad's little Zoom memorial, I think that was the day that I felt like I could finally let my guard down. I didn't have to put a face for anybody, like that
Mhm.
composed face that I do. Um, and I couldn't get out of bed. I felt like I had the weight of the world just left my body, and I was weak,
Yeah.
weak. Could barely pick up a glass of water. And he just said, just don't move, just stay where you are. And that Never, I'll never forget it, because it helped me heal. My body needed to recoup from that wall that I put in front of people of like, everything's okay. You can cry with me. I'm just not gonna cry with you, but you can cry with me. So it's also important to have supportive people around you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. It's just
Oh, it's fine.
it's. I
It's
figure it's a podcast. It's conversational.
yes. Yes, it is. It is. So, I think there's all this talk of the new normal, and you mentioned that you're working. Are you still so how are you and your family adjusting to this whole and I hate the new normal, and I'm making air quotes right
Yeah.
now, the new normal, because it's not ever going to be normal again. I don't think for anybody, but
Mm-mm.
certainly not for you and me and others who've lost somebody to COVID. But how are you moving forward? Like what is your family doing differently? How are things feeling for you now?
At least you didn't use unprecedented.
I know. I got so tired of that
Yeah.
word.
Oh
Oh
God.
my gosh. Yeah,
It's I cannot. I never in my life will never use unprecedented or
I agree.
precedented ever again. I mean, how many politicians can say unprecedented? Like, get a dictionary, people. Anyway, um, well, the kids are back to school.
Mhm.
They're in person and they're every day, um, 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day. Um, so that was pretty much the biggest change. I'm still working from home,
Okay.
because we still once we were gonna go back to work, but then things started to heat up again here in New Jersey, so they decided to keep us back again. So I'm still working from home. When my dad passed away, though, I was having a really hard time with the kids, and I was constantly taking their temperatures. I was constantly taking their oxygen levels.
Mhm.
I was constantly touching their foreheads and everything, just to see if they were sick. It was it was hard. Like, it still is. I'm still pretty, like, they have one sniffle and I'm like, let's go get a COVID test. Like, I'm just that's just how I am right now. So my family is doing okay. I mean, we have been spared, knock on wood, thank goodness. My husband's vaccinated, I'm vaccinated. My oldest, he's vaccinated as well. The moment that they said, 12-year-olds can get vaccinated, he was on the front of the line.
Yeah.
um, Now I'm just waiting for the little ones to be able to get it. It might not be 100%, but it's at least a peace of mind for me that if they get sick, it's not going to be as bad. I mean, I think you and I have paid the ultimate price, right?
Mhm.
We
We have.
People do die from this, and they're not fake people. They're real people. They're loved ones, loved, loved, loved mothers and fathers that have died.
Mhm.
Um, Myself, I am, not gonna lie, I'm a shell of who I was. My confidence is really low, and I'm riddled with anxiety. I hate to say
Mhm.
it sounds so I hate to sound so dark, but I am riddled with anxiety, and I am not as confident as I was before. I think when you go through something so harsh, so soon, so traumatic, it takes a while for you to come back to the person that you were. And I'm not expecting to go back to being myself for a long time. uh, I did ask for help. I went to my primary care doctor when I realized that I was taking my kids' temperatures every 30 minutes. I messaged her and I was like, I need to talk to you because something's up with me. She was very understanding. I think that's also very important. If you have somebody to talk to, a medical professional, you should do it.
Yeah.
Uh, 100%. I commend those that do it because it's really helpful. And I wasn't sleeping either, and um, I took it upon myself. Like it's again, this is not the best, but I would sneak cigarettes um, in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep. I didn't know what else to do. It was
Yeah.
either that or drinking, and I didn't want to drink.
Yeah.
Um, you cope in different ways. I'm
Yep.
doing better. Yes, I'm
Good.
doing better. But if you were to meet me a year and a half ago, this conversation would be a lot more lively. I just, I do find myself being a shell of who I was. But I guess that comes with the territory, right?
hmm Yeah, I often tell people that the window visits with my mom at her memory care, for the first couple weeks, they were quaint and sweet, and I took pictures, and it was like, oh, I'm visiting my mom, and it didn't take long, and they broke my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I went and I visited her, and I smiled, and we did our speakerphone, or if it was summer and warm, the window would be open and I'd sit farther away with a mask on. But they broke me. They broke
Yeah.
my spirit. And when she died, I lived pretty much for the day when the door would open and I
Mm-hmm.
could go in. And when that didn't happen, it's crushed me.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand, doing this and talking to other people helps me so much, but it is how I'm channeling so much pain and sadness into trying to do something good.
Yeah. And I mean, I've said this before. I think, again, I'm jealous of this idea because it's
Mhm.
fantastic and it's a great idea. And it helps us.
Mhm.
Listening to your podcast and listening to the 6 or 7 episodes you have now, or 8, right? 6 or 7, 8?
I th- I I don't know. I
Yeah.
think it's 6.
Well, I heard them all. Let's put
Oh,
it that
good.
way. And it's a healing thing,
Mhm.
because you see that you're not alone. That what you're feeling, you're I don't want to use the word crazy, but you're not crazy. You're not. This is not just you experiencing this loneliness and this anger. And I think that isolation what has also shown us, and not even just people that have lost COVID. I think you know a lot of folks is that you are, yes, you're surrounded by your family, but you also feel alone sometimes,
Yeah.
even if your windows are closed and your doors are closed, and or your all your windows are open and all your doors are open, you still feel alone because you do need other people
Mhm.
outside of your immediate circle.
Yeah.
And I didn't you don't get that especially with a loss. I didn't my friends, my best friend, and the group of friends that I have, they a couple of weeks after my dad died, they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go to a park and sit by a lake and just sit by a lake quietly.
Yeah.
And they did that. They got together,
Oh,
they brought me over, and we just sat at a park together watching the lake.
yeah.
I cried, and then we went to eat dinner outside, of course, because it was like, I think we didn't get together until like March or something like that. It was quite later,
Yeah.
in a couple of months later. Um, but I wish I would have been there. Two of my friends came over. They did come over with masks and everything when my dad died. They came to my house and they sat with me, and I cried with them for a long time, and I very thankful for that as well. But you wish that you could just cry in everybody's arms, and you're isolated. You have no, like, it's just so different. I don't know. These deaths are hitting differently. It's hard to explain, honestly, how do you cope with this. It's very hard.
Yeah, it is hard to explain, and unless you've been through it, there's just not words to explain the emotion and the feeling and the aloneness and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I thank you so much for taking so much time to talk to me today. This has been really, really wonderful.
Of course, I mean, I don't think I can. First, it's an honor, but also I don't think you know, and I hope you do one day know how healing this is for people. And I know you talked about your mom, and their first episode was background on you. And I'm telling you, I'm a fan. I've listened to it, but you're doing what you're doing with this podcast is it's 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 remarkable. So thank
Mm.
you for even thinking about it.
Oh, thank you,
I
Maria.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that.
of course, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. And I will keep you and your family in my thoughts cuz I know it's you're coming up on a year and it's I remember that day I thought, "Oh, I can do it. I can do it." And it was hard. It was one of those days for me where I didn't get out of bed. So, I will keep you and your family in my thoughts.
Thank you. This year it's gonna be different. I'm gonna
Mhm.
fly to Costa Rica.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm nervous. First time on a
Mhm.
plane in 2 years. And I used to travel a lot for work. I was actually in Europe in 2019, and you think about that now, and you're like, how was I without a mask in Europe in
Yeah.
2019 and on a plane? But anyway, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna spend my dad's anniversary with my mom.
Oh, good.
I don't want her to be alone that day, so
Mhm.
I'm flying down to be with her for those days.
Good.
Um, so I'm I just I'm looking forward to it because it's a big milestone and it makes me
Mhm.
really nervous. But I think it's important that to acknowledge it. So
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
excited.
I hope it's healing. I hope it's healing.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
And that's the show, everyone. If you've lost a loved one to COVID and would like to share your story on the show, please send me an email. My email address is forthosewelostpodcast@gmail.com. If you like this episode, please share the show. Share it with your friends, share it on your social media, and once you've done that, rate and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. And then go rate it on Apple Podcast, because that's where most of our new listeners come from. Ratings and reviews are the main way this podcast finds new listeners. So please share the show. Until next time.